Good morning. I'm here at home at our kitchen table. I'm getting ready to get out on the campaign trail and was looking on my iPad here from some questions from folks from all across Virginia. And let me go through them and answer some of these questions. First, here's a question from Emily from Williamsburg. And she says, Senator, I trust you, but every time there's an election, the candidates, for as long as I can remember, say we need a line item veto and a balanced budget amendment. It always seems that once they're in office, they put up a small fight and then it is forgotten. Do we have your word that you will fight for both for as long as it takes to succeed? Well, Emily, you do have my word to fight for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution as well as line item veto authority. In fact, when I was a member of the House of Representatives for 1 year in the early 1990s, I introduced the line item veto, balanced budget amendment. We got it to a vote on the floor. And when I was in the Senate, a few years ago, I introduced it as well, and I really feel it's absolutely essential for the long-term constraints on the federal government that they live within their means. The way we do in our household, families do, states, and all businesses operate where you don't spend more than you're taking in. And for structural reform, it's absolutely essential that we send to the states a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution as well as line item veto authority. And I've seen as governor when we operated with it, as well as when I was in the Senate, this is truly the long-term solution to the profligate, wasteful spending and the federal government involved in too many things that are none of their business. So I have no doubt that if it were sent to the states, it would be ratified in 3 years because 49 states operate with a balanced budget requirement. I have another question here from Phil from Manassas, and it's a good question that I hear from a lot of folks, and let me paraphrase some of this. He says, since we have not had a federal budget in over 80 days, it would seem to me that this is a dereliction of duty to continue spending and enacting legislation without identified spending. And he asked me once elected, how will I get this horse back in the barn? Well, the reality has not just been 80 days, it's been over 900 days, over 2 years. Since Congress has actually passed a budget. What they're doing is having these continuing resolutions. The fiscal year begins on October 1st. It is the job of members of Congress to enact a budget and appropriations bills so that you have some control over things. And so these continuing resolutions to me are a dereliction of duty, as Phil says. Here's the way to handle it. We need to get back to basics. If you're a contractor and you don't get your job done on time, you don't get paid. That's the way it ought to be in Congress. I introduced this before, and if you hire me on to be in the U.S. Senate, I'm going to make them vote on it, that if appropriations, budget bills are not passed on time, you withhold the members' pay until it's done. And I think we just really need to get back to basics and have a discipline in Washington, the same sort of discipline we have in the real world. I have actually a couple of questions here all combined into one. Both Perry from Topping, Virginia, and John from Fairfax asked me about my position on right-to-work laws and nationally as well as unions. And let me say this on right-to-work laws. I know as governor, Virginia being the furthest state north on the eastern seaboard with a right-to-work law really gives us a great competitive advantage in attracting new investment and new jobs as well as the expansion of new jobs. My view on right to work, it's a matter of liberty. I don't believe that any working man or working woman ought to be compelled and forced to pay $700 a year in union dues just to get and keep a job. And so I think that all American workers across our country ought to have that same freedom. Insofar as unions are concerned, if people want to voluntarily join a union, they have the right to do so. But I think they shouldn't be compelled to join a union. They shouldn't be forced to do so. And if there's an election, it should be a secret ballot, the same sort of way that you elect public servants and not have them intimidated by union bosses.